on the. So now it's official. So, good morning, everybody, again.
Morning.
And in case you didn't hear this, this is our new couple. We're excited to have join us, Andy and Chrissy.
Yay!
And as I was saying to a few of you, they have. How many videos do you think that was? I don't even know.
It was
All of them.
Yeah, it was all of them. So, but it was a lot. It was definitely over 50.
They binged.
Binged all of them.
So they have an idea of who you guys are. You don't realize it.
And they joined anyway, huh?
Your
I know.
Yeah.
It's an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
I have to give Dennis a little bit of a hard time because he said that he married us 16 years ago. And I think he was trying to make himself feel a little bit younger because
Please.
it was 24.
24.
Oh,
Oh, I'm really feeling out of it now.
That would have made you about 60 some back then, right, Dennis?
Yeah, no way. I don't know. 24 years. How did I get 16? Wow.
It'll be 25
Next
this August.
Yeah.
Good for you.
wow, guys, that's awesome.
I still can't get it.
Well,
What did you
what a
guys do,
journey.
Mary, when you
What a
were
journey.
six?
And with all you've gone through,
Y'all
Now-
were children.
what we
Yeah.
want to do, Dave and I were talking this week, David Fulton.
I must have missed
We'd
that
like-
one.
What we'd like you to do is to think about a little short bio on each of your lives. And what we mean by short is maybe 5 minutes at the most. Keep it within three to five. And this is just kind of your background and a little bit about what has happened, what awareness has happened in your life to bring you into this conversation. In other words, seeing Christ as you.
And how to put life into 5 minutes. But
It is. It's difficult.
So
But-
you mean to write it?
No. Just if you need to write it, that's fine. It would help you keep it concise. But in the coming weeks, we want to have either all of us or one at a time to share
Oh, gotcha.
that. Okay, and
Gotcha.
it's not only for Chrissy and Andy, but it's for the rest of us.
Mhm.
There's some of you that don't realize yet over a year and so forth that who we really are, where we've grown up, what's been our vocation, what's religious background, family, all of that. Try to keep it short. We don't want to go on and on and on, but as illustrious as your lives are, so.
I think we all have really a whole lot to share.
Mhm.
And I think, what Dennis and I talked about would get us to know each other a little bit better. And
Mhm.
then over time, I'm sure we'll have opportunities to share more of our experience, more of our story.
Mhm.
We just don't want to cram it all into 1 or 2 weeks. You spread it out over time and share a little bit more about ourselves, just so we get to know each other better.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
it's been a wonderful journey in this last year and a half. I think it's a year and a half that we've been doing this on Sunday morning. And as a background, this really began, I think I was sharing with you, Andy and Chrissy, this really began as part of the group began in 2019. I think I erroneously said 20 somewhere or mentioned 20, but it was 2019 in a trip, a retreat we did in Hood River. And there were quite a few more that haven't joined us on Sunday morning, but this is the core. We're the core of the group that was there.
I think you're
The
leaving.
cool ones.
The cool.
I think you're leaving something out here, Dennis.
Please tell me.
Well, it actually began with me and you and Mr. Foondock on Sunday mornings.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, McChurch.
McChurch. You're right, Scott. Thanks. Yeah, it began. That went on for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Fundock, myself and Scott began to meet at the McDonald's up in Sunnyside. And it was Beth who decided that we should call that McChurch.
That kind of stuck with it. It was a
Yeah, but those were great days because it was an opportunity for me to begin to flesh out this thing that was occurring in me with David and Scott, and there were a couple other guys that came in and out during those days, but wonderful opportunity to just be engaging in this conversation and talking about what does this mean and how does it play out in all the other areas of our lives. So thanks, Scott. Yeah, that was very formative and very helpful. And then that led into the retreat, and it wasn't our first one. There was 2 retreats, one in 18 and another in 19. And the 19 one was very dramatic because the women joined us.
You opened it up to the women.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it was the right thing to do, Beth.
Yes, we were really woke.
Ahead of your time.
We were, but that was a great time in realizing the valuable input from all of the ladies, and so that was a transition for us as far as Northwest Men's Coalition. We now realize, no, this is broader. This is both genders. And what began as a men's ministry movement, I'm excited to say has evolved and grown into a much more inclusive ministry. So it's been a lot of fun.
Did you share with Andy and Chrissy the history of the Northwest Men's Ministry?
I'm not sure if I had. If you guys,
Not really. I think
We started.
ago, you may have
A little bit,
mentioned
but
it.
not much.
We were trying to do men's conferences,
mhm.
After what was that big one?
Well, the ISI, Iron Sharpens Iron.
Yeah, Iron Sharpens Iron.
Yeah.
The men's conferences were kind of falling apart, so we decided we would give it a shot. Instead of making it all weekend, we were going to do it in a day.
Mhm.
But what we discovered about men's conferences is while it inspired men that weekend and maybe for a couple weeks after that,
Mhm.
nothing ever came of them.
Yeah.
No relationships were ever formed. No men continued meeting together to
Mhm.
help each other grow. And we kind of came to the conclusion that we were spinning our wheels.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the more we looked at what Jesus did, while he had his 12 disciples, he had his 3 really close ones. And this, I think, what we're doing now is based more on that,
Mhm.
that we understand and we started to really see that what promotes growth in Christianity is close relationship.
Mhm.
And eventually, as we're starting to experience here, we're starting to see a small community come together.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
wonderful.
And in the past, and Dennis can attest to this, when we were doing men's ministry at New Hope, and the idea of community came up, the community was always forced.
Mhm.
It was more of an obligation,
Mhm.
as opposed to just people getting together because they wanted to be together.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
through our experiences of community and men's ministry, we finally got it.
Mhm.
It took a while, but we finally got it.
Yeah. The focus I realized was, as far as men were concerned, it was great, helping men be better men. But in that last conference we did, Dave, the realization came to me, this is not about us, not about men. This should be about Jesus.
Mhm.
And that just struck a chord. In fact, one of the speakers, ironically, we had two plenary speakers in the conference that would speak, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And interestingly enough, both speakers were touching on this issue, and they didn't even realize it. But they were bringing the point that Christ is our focus. And I understood where they were coming from and what they were saying, but that what struck me was, yeah, this isn't about us as guys. This should be a community of men who are endeavoring to know and more greatly understand who Christ is. Who is he and how he relates to me? And then following that, the revelation of, yes, he lives as each of us. And that was a huge turning point and really convinced me that the conferences were, and the whole focus on men's ministry was really a distraction in a sense. It was off the subject. The whole focus for me then became, how do I know this Jesus who lives in me? How do I know myself as him? That began a wonderful journey and dialoguing with, as Scott pointed out, with the guys in the church, and then our weekends, and all of you in various ways. And there's many others over the years that I've had communication with, and I know you have as well. Bringing to the forefront this question. Yes, we go to church. Yes, we sing songs. Yes, we read our Bibles. In all of that, do we really know who Jesus is? And that's the foremost question in my mind. Still, I want to know him more. I haven't even touched it. I feel like I haven't even begun.
Mhm.
I haven't even begun what really is unfathomable, to understand Christ as me.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I just want to make it clear that if you ask us to start singing on these things, I'm out of here. I'm done.
Oh, yes. I'm even ruined as far as worship music anymore. I can't, there's very few songs that I can even sing anymore that are lyrically correct in my mind, that fit this understanding. I grew up with a hymnology and a gospel sing fest that focused on Jesus way up there, and even in the old traditional hymns, Closer to Thee or In the Garden, those were all beautiful hymns we grew up with. But I realized, looking back on them, that is so far from the truth.
You're gonna get Scott all riled up.
Yeah, I know. We can't. Yeah, one thing about it, Scott, you're a big S to us here today. We don't see.
Well,
And a pink one.
And a pink S, no less. Yes.
Unfortunately, I can still see David, but I think my camera is I can't work out whatever's going on with it.
Yeah, well, that's just fine. Anyway, we made this transition, and it's exciting for me because it's opened up a whole new door or pathway of ministry. You got Andy and Chrissy, you're an example. Just dropping the line on you and seeing what God did in just saying that to you. No, Jesus lives in you.
Well, I think part of what happens too, at least this is something that I see, is the world gets so focused on finding yourself, go and find yourself, and
Yeah.
you search and it's self-help and all that self stuff, and none of it matters because your true self is Christ, period. I mean, as
Exactly.
soon as it simplifies things in such a beautiful way,
Mhm.
you don't have to run around anymore.
It
You know?
simplifies and it makes it, you feel kind of bulletproof in a way.
Mhm,
Like,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
mhm.
like you kind of feel like, well, I shouldn't be troubled by things like I was anymore. And so I get that. I'm telling this to my mom. There's this girl in Africa I connect with on Twitter. I've been
Uh-huh.
telling her about it. We had a
Nice.
Zoom meeting with her, and we're gonna do a
Yeah,
Bible
it
study
was
with
really
her
cool.
about this
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
So
Yeah.
it's like
Oh,
we're like I feel like it's like we're just like we're talking about doing an international thing.
Wouldn't that be so cool?
Know about
Yeah.
this? Like,
good for you guys.
That is
Hey.
so cool.
yeah,
So
really
Yay.
neat.
Yeah.
She's a really sweet girl, and she's a really strong Christian. She's gone through some struggles, and her and I, she's a cancer survivor, and
Uh-huh.
so it was like we had this common ground, and I never thought in a million years we'd ever do anything like this. But after we did that with you one time, we realized we could do that with her,
Uh-huh.
and it was amazing. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. It felt like she lives down the street
mhm.
now.
pretty-
Yeah.
Like, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good for you. No, you go. God be all over that. And in
That's
that.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah. That is as I've said before, that is my desire, that you guys take the truth and just explode and off in all different arenas and your relationships and just spread the good news.
Same here.
Yeah. You know, we watch and listen for the clues. As we said a couple of weeks ago, this message is caught. It isn't taught. It's a revelation. And something like you just said, guys, something snaps or opens or quickens in your spirit. A light bulb goes on, and it changes everything.
It does.
So it's caught. You can talk about it, persuade and coerce people into thinking it. No, it has to be on their terms. Scott just wrote again this morning in his blog about how Paul, all of his years of being a very devoted Pharisee, in God's time, bam, one morning on his way to Damascus, it happens, and changed. His life was dramatically changed, a 180.
Mhm.
And so, and that's how you know the authenticity of this revelation.
Mhm.
When things change in your perception, you can't even read the Bible the same way. You can't sing those songs anymore the same way. You realize, what happened? Why is that all different to me now? You just you're using a whole different lens than you've had before.
He thrills me now.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't know him at all. That's how I felt. I feel like now I know him. I
Yeah.
don't feel like him at all.
Yeah.
And I have a long way to go with knowing him more, but it's like I didn't know. I really didn't. I was kind of making it up, you know?
I like that term. Yes. I think that's most of Christianity. We're making it up.
You said something earlier, Dennis, about listening.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that was never promoted in church that I recall was when it came to sharing the gospel or sharing this truth, not particularly this truth, but the truth we understood at the time.
Yeah.
There was no patience involved.
Right.
There was no listening involved.
Yeah.
There was, we need to go out, we need to shove this down other people's throats. What if that poor clerk in the store, God, I love this story. What if the poor clerk in the store, you went in there and you didn't share the gospel with him and he died that night?
That's
Oh
right.
my God.
Right.
Nothing like a little bit of guilt. Okay?
That's on you.
That's right.
That's right. It's all my fault. So we have the best success at sharing just a bit of the truth
Mm-hmm.
if we listen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jesus and the Bread of Life commercial, yeah. Jesus and the Bread of Life sermon says 3 times, nobody comes to me until God has prepared them. Okay, well, we don't look for that preparation. We just jump in and start hammering.
Mhm.
Okay. When maybe all we're being asked to do is share one simple little statement and leave it at that.
Mhm.
Okay. Plant the seed, water, just like Paul says.
Mhm.
But, it's like me when Dawn and I are out planting in the summertime or in the spring. I go out there the next day after we planted and there's nothing coming up out of the ground. And I'm just going, grow, damn it, grow. And we expect the same thing with people we try to lead to Christ.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I dumped some water on you yesterday. Why the hell aren't you getting it?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to, are we listening what God is laying on our heart to say to people,
Mhm.
to say that and say no more?
Mhm. Yeah.
Part of that too is that so then it's not up to us, and people, it's that notion of, I have to say something to the grocery person, I have to say something, and it's not up to us, it is up
Mhm.
to God's time, his, and all, I mean, it's all him. And so if we are trusting in him and his time and his will to be done, then it's off of our plate. Our part is being
Being
Christ
vessel.
through us. Exactly. We're the best,
Mhm. Mhm.
but there isn't a pressure for us. There isn't a guilt in any of that.
Amen.
It
That's
is,
right.
yeah, trusting in God. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. It go ahead,
Sorry.
Andy.
It's kind of, God's already done it, and you have to realize that and see
Mhm.
that the end is already done,
Mhm.
and so all you are is a vessel.
Mhm.
That's right. In finishing up this last chapter this week at home in the Lord, it occurred to me, in this very point you're making, Dave, when you say no one comes to Jesus unless he's prepared or unless the Father draws him. And what a powerful truth to know that God is already there in people's lives. He's in all of us.
Mhm.
And otherwise, how do we account for the fact that he's working? How do we account that he's doing something in us?
Mhm.
It's all him. He's there. And most people have this problem of understanding, how do I get near God and how do I know what he's doing? He's silently there. He's all in all. He's in our lives and working in his timing, bringing things together in his perfect way. And then at the right moment, boom,
Mhm.
birth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Like, exactly. I mean, this is what's happened to us over the last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so, wow, let him do it.
Mhm.
And as Jesus said, it's fun watching for the Father. I only do what I see the Father doing.
Mhm.
You think about Jesus, how much of a relaxed attitude that gave him.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he didn't have to worry or feel guilty about not running off to all the various parts of Palestine and making sure everybody knows him and everybody hears he just went along. Okay, Father, got up in the morning. Where are we going today? What are we doing today?
Mhm.
Or more accurately, what are you doing today, Father?
Right.
Yeah. And so it's a fun trip.
Mhm.
yeah. I have to be honest, at first it was a little crazy. I mean, once I kind of realized what was happening, it was like,
Ah,
okay, I felt at peace about things
Yeah.
finally.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not alone there.
That's
shake.
right.
The shake-up.
Mhm.
If instead of looking, I love that line, and it's not mine. I attribute Wayne Jacobson with this. We stop looking at God, we start looking with him.
Mhm.
That's profound. Christianity has taught us to try to look at God, try to see God, look into heaven and see God. No, we look with him. He's with us, in us, and looking out through our eyes in a way, and seeing the world, seeing the issues, seeing the problems. And boy, there's a ton of them.
Mhm.
It's a mess.
No shortage there.
Yeah. But God is through our eyes. We need to understand how's he seeing this? Here's the problem, and the appearance, it looks like this. But God's seeing something different there. I want to know, I want to see more accurately what he's seeing. He's looking at the same problem with me. Same issue.
I just realized who you are, Dennis.
Who I am?
I'm looking into that sky behind you, and all I really
Right.
see is you. So
That's
you
my
must be
wannabe
God.
place.
You must be God.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yes, the glorious
However,
sunset.
however, if you were God, I would think you could fix your own eyesight and not have to wear glasses anymore.
Right.
And we wouldn't have to fact check you.
Turns out God does wear glasses, Dave.
Does wear glasses.
Dennis.
Yeah, and that's not all. He wears glasses and he does other things too. Yeah, so yeah.
Apparently he loses his hair too. So
Yeah, right. We say that and it's funny, but boy, hasn't the picture and the understanding of that God himself changed? This is you grew up in Christianity, the religious variety, and God was fearful. You didn't dare take his, well, at the very least, you never took his name in vain. And I really didn't know him. Now I feel like God he's so much more connected with me. He's bearing me up. He's helping. He's serving. This is who he really is. And what better demonstration of that visibly than Christ? And that was Christ's whole mission, to show who the Father is. And that's our God. That's the God that lives in us and through us. What a whole different picture. A whole different picture.
It's interesting. After my mom died, my dad remarried. He remarried this gal by the name of Nancy. And I mean, it was a marriage doomed to fail because she was Catholic. He was a Christian Scientist.
Yeah.
But I affectionately referred to Nancy as my wicked stepmother. And yeah, I mean, she was a neat lady. She really was. And but she made a comment to me one time. She said, since you've become a Christian, she says, I've noticed that God hasn't changed you. He's just smoothing off the rough edges. So, that statement made me realize that God allows us to be who we are to reflect him to a certain audience. Okay, because Dennis, we've talked about this 100 times. You're going to be able to talk to people I can't.
That's right.
And I'm going to be able to talk to people you can't, just because of what we've been through in life.
Exactly. And that's very intentional, isn't it? Very intentional.
When I think it was my first trip to Africa, Don Brenneman asked me. Don Brenneman was a person leading the trip for Andy, you and Christy. Because I didn't become a Christian until I was in my 40s. And Don asked me, he says, is there anything in your life you would change? I thought about it a minute. I said, no. He says, well, maybe coming to the Lord sooner. I said, no, not even that, because my life experiences have allowed me to talk to all kinds of people that even Don would never be able to talk to.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, he was a lifelong Christian, and you know, even though he wasn't a saint, of course, I still had experiences that he didn't. And it goes back to, we come to Christ when we have been prepared.
Hmm.
And for me, that was in my 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah, but go ahead.
I was gonna say, it does make you then look back. You wouldn't change anything because it's as God had intended the entire time for your life. It makes you realize in the moment of turmoil, in the moment of a struggle, it's hard. It's hard because it's hard, of course. It's turmoil, it's a struggle. But knowing God's glory through it, God's blessings through it, and on the other side of it,
Mhm.
that's the part that, so when I look back and I think about all the stuff that just at the time it felt so hard, and the Bible talks about rejoicing in your tribulations, and it's like, but how? But how can you do it because it's so hard? But that is how it's the knowing and the trusting.
Mhm.
God's working in this. He is just working in this no
Yeah.
matter what.
Well, yeah, and aside from the hard struggles, all the stupid things we did, perhaps we didn't know better, or, you know, based on where we were at the time.
Hey, speak for yourself.
You know, what helped me out were the verse, I think, out of Malachi, where God talks about he will restore the years the locusts have eaten.
Mhm.
Okay. And to me, what that translated to was he would take all the crap in my life and turn it to good. Okay. Like Joseph saying to his brothers, what you intended for bad, God intended for good.
Mhm.
Okay. So not that I necessarily intended things for bad in my life, but things that didn't go well were intended to be good at some point.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So either through relating to somebody going through the same thing and helping through it, or
Mhm.
whatever the reason happens to be. And I think this is why I could say to Don Brenneman, no, I have no regrets. No, I would not change anything.
Right. Right. Word just arrived yesterday that many of you know, would know Dale Galloway, who
Mhm.
founded New Hope Community Church, passed away.
Oh,
And yeah, and so he'd been failing, and the word finally came that he had passed. And so, in hearing that news, my wife and I were sitting there digesting the impact of that. And some of you know this, and some not, but Dale, working under Dale's ministry as I did, he hired me in 89, I'm sorry. Wow, I'm really getting old.
69. What are you?
So in 1989, I went to work for Dale as one of his associate staff. And the church, New Hope Community Church, was growing, 2 services, a couple thousand combined Sunday mornings, powerful small group ministries, all of that. I was very enamored, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work for him. But in that process, those years of working under Dale was hard. He was a very strong visionary. He was a taskmaster. He had high expectations. He wanted us to achieve just unreal goals in the sense of growing and furthering the church. And
by the time I came in, he was gone.
He was gone. He departed from the church in 95.
Yeah.
95 or 96. I think it's 95. And but those 6 years, 7 years, I don't remember, they were really the most challenging years for me in ministry, in figuring out who I was. And there was times in which there was, and I say it respectfully. I don't begrudge Dale at all, but what working for him taught me, I needed to be very confident in who I was, because there was no or very little respect. If you didn't reach your goals, always the thought before you was, well, there's the door. And so you work your butt off, just 80 hours a week, and he wanted every hour accounted for, calling, visiting. And so it was a tough period. And my wife and I were talking about that. What was going on there? What was in God's mind? Why was I
No,
yeah, that's it.
And so it begins.
Yeah. And why did I have to endure those?
Dennis, I think you touched on right there. You touched on where a lot of people, a lot of believers are right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've written about, as you know, I've written about a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've written a lot about, in fact, my writing this morning, if you read it, was
I did.
the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing who we are.
That's right.
Who we are on the inside.
So the issue is, were those years wasted? What was that all about? Why did I have to endure those
he was
challenging years?
He was working in you, is what he was doing.
See, they're not wasted. They're not for naught. Those were years, as David said, they were intended for good. And God was in there preparing, and all those 40 plus years of ministry combined as pastoral ministry were preparing.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, I could see it was not a bit of it was wasted. It was all developing what I can see as a frame of reference in which I can now look at the other side. Some of you have heard me say, and you understand this principle, we only understand something by its opposite. Okay, Chrissy?
Something you said to us the day before you went on your trip was, you said that you don't have to, I can't remember exactly how you worded it. It was basically, you don't have to work for God and for Christ.
Big thing he wants.
It was, you just said you just have to be, and it was like just having to be was such a freeing thing to think about, because it wasn't rush. Am I doing enough? Am I doing all the right things? It wasn't the grading of how did I do today or anything like that. It was just like, I can literally breathe and just be Christ through me.
Hey, Dennis, can I comment on that?
Yeah.
There's a scripture out there that says it is not by you. You probably can name it. I can't right now right off the bat. There's nothing in our works that guarantees our salvation.
Yeah.
It's from, it's the grace of God and love of God that guarantees that.
Yeah.
So there's no work or no effort that we can put in to what he does.
And those years taught me that greatest lesson, that yes, I can work my tail off for God, but what really counts in the end is what he does, not my effort. And those years of, it was almost like, I felt like looking back on it, it was like the children of Israel being subjected to the law. And the reason they were subjected to the law is that they chose that. And God says, okay, I want you to just see if that works. I want you to just try as hard as you can to see if that style of life and your relationship with me makes any difference. You working really hard. And you realize, wow, no, I get it. I really see it.
So would you, knowing what you do now, would you have changed anything?
At that point in my life, given where I was, no, that was valuable preparation.
Mhm.
Yes. Scott, as you wrote about Paul, think of him. All those years he gave to being a devoted Pharisee.
Mhm.
Would he change that?
No,
No, I don't. He wouldn't change a minute of it.
that's part of what made him one of the greatest, speakers of Christ that we've ever known.
Exactly. And he could look back on that and say, yeah, I was the greatest. I was head of the class. I was all of that.
Chief of all sinners.
But I've given that all aside to know Jesus.
Mhm.
Now think about that a moment. Putting that all aside, that reference, that point of reference gave him a greater respect or appreciation for Jesus.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commensurate value, of course. Wow, Jesus is so much better. I know that now. I know that. Okay. I've got however many years Paul had by that time.
Well, that's what a lot of people they hear about the transformation of Paul on the road to Damascus.
Mhm.
It's not written in scripture all that much, and people don't realize or have never heard about all those years, like you said, that he spent in the desert learning
Exactly.
about, learning about
Mhm.
what this new concept was that he was introduced to.
Mhm. Yeah, he had 3 years of sitting in the church somewhere with a couple guys talking through what. Yeah, and that was the beginning of the gospel, the real gospel, the true gospel.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, people, when he came back with that truth, a lot of the church did not accept it.
No.
But
And
then
I've asked you this question before because you're pretty good with your scriptures. I mean, when you were on staff at New Hope
Mhm.
and you came across that lexicon scripture that we go through, Galatians 2:20,
Right.
I mean, what were your first thoughts about it?
It's got that scripture only applied to Paul.
Mm-hmm.
That was the common interpretation. Paul was expressing a personal testimony of his own. Had really no bearing on who we are. Yes, we could look at Paul as an example, but we didn't look at that scripture as transferable.
Right.
And it was not speaking directly to us. See, that's the what we called there's a term for that in hermeneutic, well, in Bible,
Bibleese.
yes. Yeah, it is. When people, theologians, pastors, teachers try to exegete the scriptures, there's a very strict way that you do that. You look at it from the standpoint of time frames. Okay, that was for them. This is for us. I mean, you segmented the scriptures from that standpoint. We call that a dispensational view. And so
But then Paul also goes in Galatians or in Romans 6.
mhm,
Romans 6:6-11 goes in the same. He
mhm.
mentions the same thing.
And Scott, that same passage, died with Christ, rose with Christ, that didn't have any bearing. My eyes were closed to that scripture. I didn't see it. No, it took years. I knew there was a kernel of truth in Romans 6-8.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the first one. If any of you ever come across a little book by Watchman Nee, anything of Watchman Nee, I really encourage you to read. Watchman he probably was a precursor to this message, this revelation.
That was his name?
Watchman Nee.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a Chinese believer in the church just before the communist revolution.
Right.
And so He had to go underground, as a lot of the believers did in that era. But he had a profound ministry up until that time, and really after as well. Watch my knee. And the little book, I can't recall the title of it, but he talks about Romans 6-8, and that unlocked for me a thirst. Wow, I knew this was bedrock truth. But again, I had to have a change of lens to finally see it.
Yeah.
He was building and preparing me, and then boom, now it all made sense. It was when the light finally goes on.
There's so few people out there, so few ministers that have that realization that you've come across.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why you don't hear that much about it.
Yeah, Scott, I'm not the only one. I'm here to say that there are tons of people out there. For instance, you've heard me say the name Norman Grubb.
Mm-hmm.
And out of Norman's ministry, a whole group of people have spun off in their own writing, and you can find them out there today.
Yeah.
If you Google the phrase "Christ is us," you unlock a treasure trove of people you've never heard of before, and who are writing.
A lot of the people, the believers that I try and broach that subject with, it's almost like you get a blank stare.
You do, because these authors have been more or less put aside and not given any credence in excuse me, in the traditional evangelical, what should we say, spectrum of books and authors.
Yeah.
Dave, you and I were talking Wednesday about an author that's a young guy that was just a rising star, and I think the Southern Baptist had a huge church in Maryland area, I think, and he wrote several books that also got me really churning. And his latest one was called Jesus in Nashville, and he had traveled to Nashville, so convinced to try on this whole idea of what it would be like if people on the streets of Nashville could see him as Jesus. Mm-hmm. Now, so he wrote a book as a result of his chronicling this experience, his day-to-day experience relating to the street people, the homeless and derelict, these kinds of people. And it was amazing to him. So he wrote about it. Well, up to this time, his publisher, which was a very regular name brand within the evangelical church circles, they were always after him to produce the next book. Come on, you got some exciting things. But when he presented to them this manuscript, they went, no, we're not going there. It was too, for them, it was out of the box. It presented too many things that bordered on heresy. Well, he was writing, guys, of the very thing that we're experiencing. He was getting this revelation of himself as Jesus, and trying to understand it as he best he could in terms of relating to people, and people that the normal culture and church would shun and say, yeah, we'll get to you, or we'll try to help you, or whatever.
It's kind of heartbreaking, because it's kind of like the media and their fake news.
Mm-hmm.
In this way, it's like they're only projecting fake news. No, we have the stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
He was off script. He was not with the narrative.
Exactly. He went off the script. His name is Jim Palmer, by the way. You can go back and find several books of his little book called Divine Nobodies. It was I think, David, you and I were talking about that book, had some profound impact. Divine Nobodies. Yeah. And there were several before that. But here was an example of a guy who all of a sudden begins to move in this conversation, and the regular church community say, you've gone off script. We can't deal with you anymore.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so you're going to still experience that out there. You're not, and that's why we were saying a couple of weeks ago, there's no way you can sit down and begin to just tell somebody, oh, I want to tell you what it means to live as Jesus. And they're going to look at you with a stare and what? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not there. It's not there for them yet. Okay.
My mom thinks you're leading us astray.
Yeah, I know what I'm a cult leader.
Well, technically he is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I
It's
guess
just
so.
that when we say astray, it's in the right direction and
Yeah,
not the,
yes. Yeah, it's a good cult, I guess. All right. Whatever.
Speaking of going off script,
Mm-hmm.
Dennis, did you mention to Andy and Chrissy to take a look at come Sunday? If you two have Netflix,
oh, yeah.
come
Yes.
Sunday,
Yes.
it's an excellent movie.
Yeah.
Especially about going off script.
Exactly. He's referring, guys, he's referring to a film that you can find on Netflix. It's called
We
Sunday.
remember the episode.
You remember you guys talking about it?
Okay, all right, you got it then. Did you watch
They
it?
binged like the whole.
Yeah.
We have to realize these guys are up to speed on everything we've
I
talked about for a
know.
year.
Oh,
now.
okay.
They have an advantage.
Yeah, David, I was telling Dennis, because when he got back, we had a meeting, and I said, and when David Fulton was talking about his head guiding his grandson and he's like, how do you know David? And I was like, well, for the last
So you guys binge watch all these?
Yeah.
every single one.
One of the most powerful,
And David, I have to say, I was telling them earlier that I was so grateful that you switched it from 8 to 9.
Dennis, one of the most powerful lines from that movie. You remember when they were questioning him at the right near the end, and he's explaining to the bishop, if you could save your father from hell, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great example from the standpoint of somebody seeing this revelation in ministry, pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
Carlton Pearson, as you see in the movies, I used to listen and watch things from him years ago, and he was really as we say, the rising star in the charismatic movement.
Yeah.
And he was at the forefront of trying, crossing the what we call the racial divide. I call it more the ethnicity divide between blacks and whites and all the other ethnicities. And he had that huge growing church in Tulsa. And the film is pretty accurate in showing how that just all imploded. So, and it came loose on him. So, well, next week, guys, whoever has their little bio ready to go, let's look forward to your sharing. Keep it short, just real quick. And pray too that I'm trying to look at the last chapter, and because it's the last chapter, there's a lot excuse me, there's a lot hanging on its impact. I feel like it has to be a summary statement. So it's causing me to go back and review, which is a good thing, all the previous things that we've written and talked about. I don't know if when I'll get it finished, but bear with me. So,
We need to do a podcast, Dennis, on that, or you and I on that one or the writing that I did yesterday.
let's schedule it, Scott. We're overdue. Yep, we're overdue.
You can do it over the dinner you're gonna buy him.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why I was so afraid about it. Why? Because that would make me down too, and I couldn't really get away with that.
Actually, you owe him a couple of dinners now, don't you?
Yeah.
Only one so far that I know of.
I think it's like 2 or 3.
Yes, David. I'm sure it's 2 or 3.
He's like,
I
thank
think
you.
the statistic bureau that David Fulton is monitoring really doesn't isn't updating with the.
Chrissy, you were saying something.
Oh, I said, and thank you, David, for keeping score. That's what. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's what.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping score, David.
All right, everybody.
Scott, you know I'm there for you.
That's what
As,
worries
as
me.
always, great to be with you Sunday morning.
Thank you. And it's great to have you guys.
Great to welcome Andy and Chrissy.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yay.
and
See you all next week.
we'll see everybody in the coming week. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
Dennis.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.